I hope in this video to help you understand what it means to interview your ancestors. I also hope that I'll be able to help you become convinced of the importance of it and feel capable of doing it. At the heart of giving interviews to your ancestors is this idea that after you find a green temple and before you request ordinances and print a card, you should give your ancestors an interview. What I mean by giving your ancestors an interview is that you should CARD them, correct and complete vital information, analyze family relationships, review sources, and duplicates should be solved. I'll be demonstrating these 4 steps in a few different interviews in a few minutes, but I wanted you to be exposed to the idea of going to the person page of an ancestor and thinking about these 4 different aspects of what you could do to their person page. These are the reasons that we will want to interview an ancestor before we take them to the temple. First, it ensures that duplicate work is not performed. Don't trust the computer to always find the duplicates in your family. There are many times that your human eyes will do a better job of determining whether duplicates are on the person page of an individual than the computer is able to do. Furthermore, it helps you know and love your ancestor. This is a very important byproduct of working on the person page, is that you get to know and love them as people and understand a little bit of what happened in their lives. It also causes your ancestors' information to be more complete and reliable. You will oftentimes go from having an individual who had very little information available to having complete information because you were able to find a birth record on a census record, and you were able to find a spouse on a marriage record, and you were able to find a marriage date on a marriage record. And before you know it, you collected a few sources and plugged in the information that was missing, and this ancestor now has very complete and robust information about them. It also causes us to view the individuals that we serve as real people rather than names. It's kind of sad when we take 10 or 20 names at one time and don't know anything about any of them, and they're just kind of being processed through by us. Interviewing the ancestors helps us to treat them as individuals. You think about how much time you would spend doing missionary work with the living. You'd become their friend and have them over for dinner and play games with them and then teach them the gospel in your home and on and on. Well, these people that we take to the temple are just as real as those individuals, and they deserve 20 or 30 minutes of our time in terms of us trying to get to know them and also to improve the information about them and to make sure that no errors are performed as we're performing their ordinances. Perhaps the most important reason that we don't want to just automatically perform ordinances for somebody that we find is that in doing so, we might hide that ancestor from other people who would interview them if they could find them. What I mean by that is if you find a green temple and you take that person to the temple and perform the ordinances that are initially identified, then those ordinances will disappear. And when people in the future do searches, the ancestor that you took to the temple won't appear for anybody else. And if you could have added a wife and children or parents and sealed them to their parents or sealed them to a spouse, but you didn't bother to add that information, you not only didn't do it yourself, but you made it harder for somebody else to find that individual and be able to perform that additional work that you could have easily done had you given an interview to your ancestor. While I'll be demonstrating a lot of different things, I want you to keep at the heart of your thinking the idea of this interview process. That's what I want you to take away from this video. I'm going to try to find somebody to take to the temple, and the way that I'm going to do it is to look at the descendancy view on Family Search. To do that for myself, I particularly prefer to do it with the fan chart view instead of the landscape view. So if I change it to the fan chart view, and then I'm at the center and my ancestors radiate out from me, I want to go out usually to somebody that's born around 1800, and it would be in this row out here. That seems to be a great place to start most of the time, is to find somebody there, because then the people that we'll be dealing with who are descendants of theirs will have been born in the late 1800s, where we have a lot of resources, both in terms of sources and in terms of other information. In this instance, I'm going to do a little bit farther back. I'm going to go to my great-great-great-grandfather, and I'm going to hover over his name and put him in the center. And then I'm going to go one step further and go back to Peter Kivett, who was born in 1755, and I hover, click the chart at the base of his name, and put Peter in the middle. So my pivot person is somebody who was born in 1755. Once you pick a person that is an ancestor of yours that you're going to then consider their descendants, and you have them in the prime position of a fan chart, then what you would do is change your view from fan chart and turn it into a descendancy view. So I have Peter and his descendants. It starts with just his wife, and his children. And I could spend some time here, but I'm going to go ahead and click the 4 generations, which will give me Peter and his 4 generations coming down from him. A lot of times when this happens, you'll find that the computer bogs down and says, wow, I've got a whole bunch of names that you've given me, and I don't know that I can handle all of them. But my experience is that when the system says this, we found too many names, it still can handle it. You just need to X out of it, and it still works. So I'm not sure. I think it's more just the computer whining than actually not being able to do the job. So in this instance, I've got Peter at the top, and then his family coming down 4 generations worth. Let me just quickly show you a few things about the descendancy view. On the top right over here are these options that will tell you what everything means. These are the 4 main icons that we'll see on the right side of the page. This one is really important for you to make sure that it's unclicked, because if you click it on, you'll have big circles over here that take up about 3 times as much room and make it very difficult to navigate the page. So make sure that's unchecked as you're using this view. Then I want to tell you just a little bit about each one of these icons. The one on the far right are data problems. There's a few different things that are very important to know about data problems. They sometimes will point out that you've got duplicates. Sometimes they'll point out that you have a legitimate problem, like your person had lived for 150 years, or the child was born before the mother was born. They also will do like this data problem and point out that there's a missing standardized date. Standardized dates and places are important, not just because you want to have your information look as correct as possible, but it also means that the computer is able to read the information and then go and conduct searches and find you record hints. Record hints are these blue icons. Anybody that has a blue icon to the right of their name has a record of some sort that's waiting for you to review and perhaps attach to them and use the information that's found in it. These record hints are about 97% accurate in terms of actually being about your ancestor that they're pointing out. The purple icons are for research suggestions. They might point out that you have no sources for that individual, or that there might be a possibility of missing children, that kind of a thing. What I want to spend most of the rest of our time with are these temple icons. When you have a temple icon that's blue, it means that the person needs temple ordinances, but somebody's already requested them. So we don't need to focus much on the blue icons. As you come down, eventually you will find an icon perhaps that is orange. Orange icons mean that the person needs more information, but they do need temple ordinances. When we say that they need more information, everybody that's going to be taken to the temple needs to have a name, a date, and a place. And so an orange icon indicates that one of those 3 things is missing, And if you could find one of those three things, you'd be able to take them to the temple. So you can see how exciting it would be to have an orange icon with a blue record hint beside it, because the record hint might very well provide the missing piece of information. And if you added it, you'd be able to change that orange icon to a green icon. And the green icons are simply saying this person needs an ordinance and it looks like it's ready to go. Now, it isn't always ready to go. For instance, this green icon, it doesn't show a duplicate. There's no data problem being indicated, but if you were to go into him, he has a duplicate, and it's a very difficult duplicate to resolve. So I want to show you a few different interviews real quickly, and I'm not going to actually do the work of it. I'm going to give you the philosophy behind it more than actually attach the record hints or those kinds of things. So the first person that I want to show you is somebody who has an orange temple, meaning they need more information. His name is James Henry White. If I click on his card, then you can see that the problem is we've got 2 dates, but we have no places. And so it says he needs all of his ordinances, but there's not enough information to perform any of them. And so what I'm going to do is right-click on this person down here and then open the link in a new tab. I do that so that I don't lose this screen that took me a few seconds to populate. When I go, I now have James Henry over here on this new tab, and as I look at it, I can see, and let me just quickly illustrate what I'm having go through my mind if I'm wanting to interview anybody. And almost always when I go to a person's person page, this is the process that I'll go through. I'll quickly try to look and say, what information do I have and what am I lacking? So for him, I need a birthplace. I wouldn't mind having a better birth date. I need a death place. I wouldn't mind having a better death date. Burial's good, but it's not essential. I come down here, I'm missing a spouse and I don't have any marriage information. Could I find a spouse, add that spouse, and maybe take that spouse to the temple? Does he have children? Could I find those children? How would I find those children? Well, a census record is a likely idea for being able to find children for somebody. He does have parents, and if you look, sometimes over to the right, you'll see 2 sets of parents, which usually is problematic. And so with him, I only have 1 set of parents, and things are looking pretty good there. His brothers and sisters all have different names, so there's no built-in duplicates there. So the family looks good other than missing a spouse and missing children. So I would love to, at this point, find a birth place, a death place, a marriage date, a spouse, and some children, if I could, before I take him to the temple. Then, as I look up, I have no sources currently. One of the first things that I always want to do in terms of this correct and complete is to look over in this area with the research help. This is where my data problems would be, and this is also where my record hints would be. For this man, I have neither one. If I had a data problem, it might be that it would be a duplicate, and I would go look at that first of all. No sense going through and changing everything, adding sources, and then finding out that the duplicate person already had all those sources added, and I wasted my time. So I might take care of the duplicate first. And then if I have record hints, I could look at those record hints and say, oh, great, that record hint will give me the information that I need in terms of his birthplace. Since I don't have record hints this time, then I have to think about it for a minute and say, what might give me the information that I'm looking for? And there's a couple of different approaches that I could have. One is to either go to one of these different links that take me to partner sites. Now, Family Search is the site itself. It's not a partner site, but record hints are 97% accurate. If I were to click on Family Search, it would use the information I have over here and find me other sources that might only be 80% accurate, but very likely would be matches. If I click on Ancestry, it would take me out to Ancestry, but the beautiful thing is it doesn't just take me to Ancestry site, it takes me to the search page on Ancestry and pre-fills the field with this information so that I don't have to type in all of this into search parameters. It's automatically done. Now I may want to change some of those search parameters and put in more information or less information. If I'm looking for a marriage record, I certainly don't want the death information on there because that might make it difficult for the computer to find the marriage information. So you can see that I might change some things, but it's a great head start. So one place I might go initially to try to find this birth information is to click Ancestry and see what comes up. But another thing that I sometimes might do is to say, I may not have much luck going to Ancestry with the small amount of information that I have. What if I look at the rest of his family and I say, oh, dad has a good birth date, birthplace, marriage date, the information's much more complete. So what if I were to click on Henry's page and open him up? You see how good his birth information is. So what if I were to go to Henry's page and see if Henry has sources? So Henry has 4 sources. Now, let me just take you back real quickly to the man we're working with, who is James Henry White. James Henry White was born in 1857. So the source that I hope I might be able to find from his dad is an 1860 census, because Henry would have been 3 years old in an 1860 census. And if an 1860 census is attached to Henry, I'll be able to use that information for his son, James. So I'm going to go to Henry and I'm going to look at his sources. In his sources, he has a death record, a find a grave that's also a death record. He has an 1850 census, which would have been 7 years before our person was born, but he does have the 1860 census. So if I were to click and open that and look at the information that's available there, I can see that I've got a Henry, Emily, Josiah, James, and Barbary. Barbary is a female. So Henry, Emily, Josiah, James, and Barbary. When I come back here to James and I look at the people in his family, Henry, Emily, Joseph, James, Barbara. So the Barbara could be the Barbary and Joseph could be Josiah. I need to make sure that this is a match. And so I'm going to look back again and say, let's see here. Emily, the wife, is actually 12 years younger than than the husband. Josiah in 1860 is 6 years old. James is 3 years old, and Barbary is 0. So Barbary's born in 1860. James is 1857. Josiah is going to be 1853 or 1853 or 1854. And these guys are going to be a good 11 or 12 years apart. So let me look back at my my people and just see if that's right. She is born 11 years later than him. That's a nice sign. I've got him born in 1854, James born in 1857, and Barbara is a newborn in 1860 as well. So this is my family, even though the names are slightly different. And you can imagine a census worker going around and taking a tally and asking, so what are your kids' names? And so the census records a lot of times will be off by a year and also have the names not be completely accurate. But in this case, what I have found by finding this census record on his dad is that I can now know that James that I'm wanting is born in Clark County, Alabama. And so when I come back to him, I can put down Clark County, Alabama here. And let me just show you something that will demonstrate the importance of just putting in that little piece of information. So if I type in Clark, Alabama, and then put in verified on 1860 census. Now I would want to attach that census to James as well as it is to his dad, but I'm not going to take the time on this video. But with this information put on here of the birthplace as well as the birth date, I now, if I refresh my page, should have my orange temple become green, and I can now take James to the temple. However, there's something I want you to be aware of. This demonstrates the need for the interview. If I take him right now to the temple, And you can see that I can. All I have to do is click request and I can take him. If I were to take him to the temple, I would do that thing that I was talking about where I hide his ordinances, because anybody else that would do a search once I complete these ordinances would not find a green temple. They would just find, like these people, nothing popping up. So when I'm coming to him, I have found one thing and made it so I can take him to the temple. But let's do this ancestry search that I had mentioned a minute ago. I go ahead and click Ancestry, and when I come here, I have James Henry White, who was born on 4 December 57. And let's see, our guy is 57. And then I've got him dying 23 August 38. He dies in 38. And so this is probably my guy. I'm going to go ahead and look at this Find a Grave thing. And you can see that I've got Dad Henry and Mom Emily. Remember, those were the names, Henry and Emily. So this is, our person. What I want you to notice as we do this, if I go to the actual website, I get not just information about James Henry and his more precise birth date and death date, I also get information about his parents, his spouses, and his children. Now, I'm not going to take the time in this video to attach his spouses and his children, but can you see that if I were to have gone to the temple just with James Henry, I might have lost the chance to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more people to the temple as well. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to illustrate with the power of the interview, is it seems like it's slowing you down, but in some ways it's actually speeding you up by allowing you to take more people. And if I had taken James Henry when I put in the Alabama birthplace and not waited and put in this Find a Grave information, I would have then hidden him from other people who might have gone and bothered to put all these other people in, and that would have caused the family to be truncated and not have the full information that we wanted about them. Now I'm going to go ahead and come back to my screen that has the information from the descendancy view, and I'm going to get rid of these others. Obviously I'm going to have to come back and do some work after this video of getting James and his family to the temple. But what I want to do now is go down a little bit further and show you another person. This is Livonia Pierce. She looks like she is ready to go to the temple. When I click on the temple, she just needs to be sealed to her parents, and we know who her parents are. So this shouldn't be a big deal. But even at that, I still don't take somebody to the temple without interviewing them. So I click on her person page, and I go ahead and right click and open the link in a new tab, and Livonia comes up. Now she's got 5 sources and she's got 3 record hints waiting. And so as I look at her information, good birth information, good death information, even good burial information, I've got a lot of information about where she lived at different times. I have a husband, I've got a good marriage information, I've got a lot of children there, and parents. So as I'm quickly doing this correcting for the C part, the correcting and completing, there's nothing to correct and complete. And as I analyze the family, it all looks really good. I don't see anybody that looks like they're, these two might be duplicates, Lifronia and Sophronia, born in the same, but they have different death dates. Anyway, I don't see big problems about this. So I could just probably take her to the temple as is, but I've got these 3 record hints. So I'm going to take just a quick second and I'm going to see what sources she has. And all of the sources are census records. Now, I'm kind of OCD, so I like to just drag them and put them in the places that they really belong order-wise. So I'm trying to get them, ordered according to date. So now I've got 1860, 70, 1900, 1910, 1920. I'm going to go back to her details page now and see what these record hints give me. Now, you notice with 5 sources that are all census records, all that that's going to prove is the birth information in a vague way. It's going to give me the date, the year, and the state that she was born in. That's all those census records are going to prove. Now, the 1900 census record will tell me how many years before 1900 they were married, so I would probably be able to get this 1881, but I wouldn't get the exact date or the place from any of these census records. So all that I have proof of is birth information, basically, with the census records that I have. I wouldn't mind having some of these record hints prove a little bit more death um, and the marriage information if I can. So I click the record hints and it shows me that I've got a marriage record, and when I click that marriage record, it shows me that there's the 5 January 81, 5 January 81, and the place, White, Illinois. And this is also going to prove some information about the people. Who her husband was and everything, but I definitely am excited about attaching this and would want to attach it before I take her to the temple. And I could do that looking at the other two sources and hopefully find a death record that would prove her death information before I take her to the temple too. So I could have easily run her to the temple, and this one isn't huge. It wasn't that I found anything that gave me more people to take to the temple, but you can see how being a conscientious person who wants to prove the information that I've got, it wasn't hard work to prove that marriage date. It was going to take me all of 3 or 5 minutes longer before I requested her information and sealed her to her parents. Now let's go back and take another look at something else. I haven't really emphasized something that you can do on the left side as you interpret these lines. Each one of these lines that ends in this way means that that's the end of the line for that, for tracing the generations. In other words, this person has no spouse. If they are like this, they have a spouse, but when they're a dead end, they need a spouse, and you can add the spouse here if you were to choose to. So what you can do with this is to say, wait a minute, if this person was born in 66 and died in 1937, they had a long, rich life. I don't know that I believe that they weren't married. I wonder if I could find their spouse. And what you then could do is look over here and see if they have a record hint. If they had a record hint, there might be a very good chance that record hint would provide the spouse. And now you're not having the computer find you people that need ordinances. You're finding people that may need ordinances and adding them to Family Search. So let me give you a quick little demonstration of doing that. I look at these names, and Dursey has no spouse, but she does have a record hint. And so I say, I wonder if maybe this record hint will help me to find a spouse for Dursey. And so I go ahead and click that, the record hint. And what comes up is information about Indiana marriages. And if I go ahead and click to get into the indexed information of what's there, I see that I've got an Archer Reese Orr, who was her husband, and I've got the marriage date, I've got how old they were, and I've got birth date, and I've got parents. So this record is going to be wonderful, both for verifying birth information and for being able to provide a spouse for my previously unmarried Dursey. And once I get that spouse, I may be able to find census records that have children and be able to add to all sorts of things, and not just take Dursey to the temple to seal her to her spouse, but also add children and seal those children to Dursey and her new spouse. Let me end with one last interview example. I've got John A. Hubble here, and he needs more information to be taken to the temple, but has record hints. If I click on his card, you'll see that he has, again, birth date and death date, but no places, and needs all of his ordinances. So I'm going to go ahead and open him up, and this will be our last interview that we will do. as I open John, I have a data problem. And so as I'm correcting and completing information, one of the first things I want to do is take care of any data problems that I have. And that data problem is a possible duplicate. So I'm going to come down and take a look at my duplicates, and I see that I have in the duplicates John A. Hubble, same exact name. I have him born in 1863, dying in 1932. I'm almost certain this is my guy. Unfortunately, I don't have any places. This guy has places. I've got parents. This guy doesn't have any parents. I've got a spouse. This guy doesn't have any spouses. So my things that, if I just had the same spouses or just had the same parents, I would go ahead and merge these guys. But with the information that I've got, I'm almost certain they're the same, but just not quite enough certain to go ahead and pull the trigger to merge them. To see if this is worth pursuing in terms of trying to get somebody to the temple, if I click on this other John, he still needs his ordinances. So even if I do merge these two people, I'll still need to perform the ordinances. And so it's worth going ahead and marching through and adding information. And what I'm going to hope is that as I try to add the information, I can find some stuff to put either a spouse or place information enough that I'll be comfortable merging these two. So if I go back to John and I look beyond the data problem, I've also got a record hint. And so you can see one of the things I'm wanting to do is either get a birthplace or a death place. Let's see what the record hint is. It's a find a grave reference. And so if I go there to the find a grave, what it tells me is, it doesn't look like it gives a lot. It looks like it tells me his burial information. I a lot of times when I'm putting this, so this is going to have the same birth date and death date, and it's going to tell me where he was buried. Now that gives me Indiana, which that other guy had, so that's kind of nice. I'm going to just real quickly add this and say verifies burial information. Sorry. And then attach it. Now, that really wasn't enough to do me a lot of good. So my record hint didn't bail me out as much as I wanted it to. You notice that even with just this burial place, I now went from an orange temple to a green temple. But if I use my philosophy that I talked to you earlier about, where I say, Dad has more information, what if I were to look at his records and see if he's got sources? And so I'm going to go ahead and open up Dad and look and see if Peleg has sources. He's got 8 sources. What I would love to have with Peleg is, I would love, now you notice that I've got 2 spouses for him, but I'm not really worried about Peleg too much right now. What I'm wanting is to get John. And so John has a brother named Joel, and John was born in 1863. So I would love to have either the 1870 or the 1880 census. So when I come back to Peleg, I go ahead and look at his sources, and I find that I've got an 1870 census. I don't see an 1880 census. So I'm going to go ahead and click the 1870 census. And as I look at it, I see that I've got Peleg and Rachel. And so Peleg and Rachel, and then I have John and Joel. Down here, I have John and Joel, but you'll notice that I've got all these other brothers and sisters that I don't have listed. And so I think I'm pretty confident that I've got Peleg, Rachel, John, and Joel. Now, Peleg's in Kentucky, Rachel's in North Carolina. And so you'll notice that Peleg is Kentucky and Rachel is North Carolina. So this is my family that this 1870 census is right. It allows me to put in Indiana for John. And then once I conclude that this is my John and Joel, I'm going to go ahead and add all of these other brothers and sisters and probably be able to take them to the temple. And then when I go back to the duplicates and want to merge them, now I have one more intersection. I've got the birth year being the same, the death year being the same, and I've got the birthplace being the same, Indiana. At that point, me personally, I think I would go ahead and merge these guys. It's right on the fringe where I wish I had one more thing, and maybe I could find some death information for John. But to make this video shorter, I just wanted you to get a flavor for, again, the power of interviewing, and how, because I interviewed, I added 5 people to this to this person that I might be able to take to the temple, and changed his orange temple to a green temple and can take him to the temple. And once I merge these two, they'll still be able to go to the temple because this guy needed his ordinances done. Well, that's demonstrating the idea of an interview. I hope it makes sense to you. The biggest thing I want you to walk away from this demonstration with is a commitment that when you find either an orange temple or a green temple, that you'll never run directly to the temple with it, but that you'll open the person page and conduct an interview where you strive to correct and complete information, analyze the family, review the sources, and check for duplicates. As you're analyzing the family, you're seeing who's missing, who you might be able to add. As you're reviewing the sources, you're seeing the sources that have already been added. You'll be amazed how often somebody adds a source but doesn't add the information from the source to the individual that it's posted to. And so you're reviewing existing sources, you're reviewing record hint and partner sites, you're reviewing sources that are attached to parents or to siblings, and all of that you're trying to gather information and put it in to the person page before you then go and request the ordinances. This is a fun experience. It brings family history to life for you, and as you get comfortable doing this, you'll enjoy family history so much more than just processing through green temples that you find and that a computer could find for you and that you have no involvement in other than to be the one who actually makes the request. So I hope that you'll become committed to interviewing your ancestors in all instances before you take them to the temple, and interviewing them as you become intrigued with them as individuals, because you will be surprised, even though there isn't a green or an orange temple there, how often you will be able to find family members or information about them if you'll just open up their person page and do things similar to what I've been demonstrating in this video.